This is the playground where the players play, and my special guest today is Larry Hall. Let's
Hello.
see, of many projects, guitarist extraordinaire. So how you doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Good, good. Again, Larry's a great guitar player. As you can see, he's got it right there in his hand, and we're going from guitar to let's see, sound, and we'll talk about that like a little bit later. Because Larry owns one of the premier sound companies in Las Vegas, Hall Audio Services. And with that, let's get started.
What can I do for you?
First of all, tell me how you got started as far as like music and all that. So what got you interested in music back in the day?
So when I was about 7 years old, roughly, my parents took me to an Air Force-based picnic, and there's a bunch of Air Force guys had a band together, and they were playing. This is like in 1970 something, so disco was kind of a big deal at the point in time, and the band played "I'm Your Boogeyman" by
Oh,
Casey and the
wow.
Sunshine
Yeah,
Band.
yeah.
And I lost my mind because I had seen Casey and the Sunshine Band on TV multiple times do it. But here's a band right in front of me that was doing it, and they were good. And it was a very distinct memory for me. And at the same time, I had accidentally wandered onto the stage area. And so the drummer snatched me up and set me on the drum throne and let me, whack the drums for a couple minutes. And I guess I was kind of addicted from there on. And then not a month later, my mom took me to the mall in Charleston, South Carolina, and there's a really bad Elvis impersonator playing. He was really bad, but his band was amazing. And like they did that big, I don't know, the big American Trilogy thing. They closed the show with it, and the musicianship was really. I even recognized at age 7 or 8 that the musicianship was so exceptional that it moved me. And so I wanted to be a combination of Elvis Presley and Ric Flair was kind of my, I wanted to be Elvis Presley meets Ric Flair, but I wasn't sure how I was going to put all that together at the time. But that was my mindset was, I wanted to be styling and profiling while picking up the ladies with a guitar strapped on,
Right.
And so that's kind of how it started. There's always musical instruments around the house, and my mother also was very, very dedicated to all types of music. We had vinyl in the house in the 70s, and I remember specifically going through her vinyl rack, and there would be CCR, Janis Joplin, Confunction, the Commodores, and I, she just listened to a very wide range of music. So that made me be able to listen to a wide range of music. And even at the age of 7, 8, or 9 years old, my parents always got, for birthdays or Christmas, I don't think they knew what the album title meant at the time, but they got me Kiss Love Gun, for my birthday or for Christmas when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I had to tell my mom years later, the Love Gun means his dick, right? And she was like, no, I did not know. Yeah, he's singing about his package, Mom. He's singing about his package. It's his love gun,
Now, did you what were you introduced to the guitar by then, or did you know anything about guitar or drums or anything like that before then?
No, my
music
mom,
was around your house. It was definitely
So my mom always was from time to time she would sing in little bar bands, and mostly with Air Force guys who were friends with my dad. And so my parents bought me a guitar when I was 8 or 10 years. Actually, I think they bought it from my mom when I was about 8 or 10 years old. And of course, I wanted to be a drummer. All I wanted to be was a drummer. So I completely thumbed my nose up at that guitar. It sat in the attic for a decade, and I became a drummer, and one of my first gigs at 14 years old is I'm playing with a bunch of 50-year-old guys 3-4 nights a week playing shag music.
Wow.
That was my first gig. It paid like 26 or 28 bucks a night back then.
Which back then was a lot of money.
That was good money, especially if my alternative was delivering newspapers. It was really good money. And but I played with this Charleston swing band. There was called, are you familiar with the music shag music?
Yes. Yes.
kind of a real beachy kind of swing. Everything
Yep.
was a swing.
Yep.
And so I played with those guys for a couple of years, actually. And
Right.
one night I made a realization. I was just getting ready to turn 17 years old. And I made a realization that I was the first guy at the gig. I was the last guy to leave the gig. And I was too dumb to just bring a kick and a snare drum like I should have brought. So I brought the big giant Neil Peart kit that took
Right.
me 2 hours to set up, 2 hours to strike. The guitar player, who's this 50-something-year-old professional guitar player, showed up with a guitar and a Fender Twin 5 minutes before we was playing.
Right.
I was like, well, that's what I want. And so we're playing a gig, and I bust a drum head and a cymbal at the same time. And I did like $200 worth of damage on a $26 gig.
Wow.
And I that was it. So the next morning I got up and I took the drums down to the local music store, and I traded them in on a Flying V guitar. And
What?
I locked myself into a bedroom for 6 months. I didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah, so you just picked up the guitar. You just picked up the guitar at the place and said, "This is it," and went for it.
Yeah, the people at the music store kind of knew me a little bit because I was that annoying kid that would come hang out for 4 or 5 hours banging on shit. So they already knew me a little bit. But they were that music store is still open in Charleston. They survived the Guitar Center hostile takeover.
Oh wow! Right.
But they took my drum set in on trade and gave me a Flying V and a little PV guitar amp or something, and like I said, I locked myself in my room with all of my vinyl plus my mom's vinyl, and I came out months later and got in my first band.
Wow. And what was that like when you got in your first band? What was that about? I mean, did you have to go through the big audition, or they're like, "Hey, we got a guitar player here, let's hire him"?
It's really okay. So, and I'm friends with all these guys on Facebook, so they'll probably see this at some point. There's a group of guys that were a few years older than me that went to a different high school than me, but we lived close to each other. Mm-hmm. They had a band called The Difference, and they basically played Prince and Van Halen. That was basically what they did. And they already had a really, by the way. Yeah, they had already had an amazing guitar player by the name of Anthony Austin, and he was, to this day, is still one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and nobody knows anything about him. But he really took me under his wing and started showing me techniques and really how to be a out front lead guitar player. I played with them for a little while, and then they ended up needing a keyboard player, and I was the expendable musician. And, it was really funny because they kind of put it to me in the context of, we're going to need to hire a keyboard player. And I'm like, yeah, sounds great. What the great part? It's not so great. That means either you or Anthony has to go. And I'm like, oh, that sucks for Anthony. But those guys, they like I said, they're a few years older than me, and they took me under their wing, and I'd only been playing guitar for 6 months, and they made me a professional guitar player.
Wow.
And I don't know where musically I would be without that brief experience, because it was literally like rehearse, go to a gig.
Right. I remember.
And there was no time for let's sort that part out. If you hadn't sorted your part out and you dropped a crap on stage, it was on you. And even I was 17 going on 18, so those guys are probably 21 or 22, and they really had it together. And but they we were doing like Power Station and stuff like that. It was really cool.
Nice. Now, as far as like your lessons and everything, do you remember like some of the first licks that you were taught?
I do. Actually, I do remember
I figured
one
you
of
would.
the first licks that I was taught, and Anthony Austin taught it to me, and only because I had taught it to myself and I had been playing it wrong. And so one of the first licks that I learned was basically just an Eddie Van Halen tapping technique. I don't know if I can play it the way as badly as I was playing back then, but basically I was playing this finger wrong, and I couldn't hear the note that I was hitting on it. So Anthony, corrected that. And another thing that Anthony corrected me on at the time was how awesome the pinky is if you use the pinky. But this was basically the first lick that I was.
Right.
That was basically the first lick that I learned.
Wow.
And I would just move that lick around. It didn't matter what the key of the song was in. If I was playing a lead, that lick was going to end up in the lead. It could have been, like the most tasteful song on the planet, but I was going to play that riff anyway. Because that was all I knew. It was all I had.
Now, needless to say, now you're just playing that, and I'm thinking more like the Eddie Van Halen thing and all that stuff. But were you doing that before were you the Eddie Van Halen before Eddie Van Halen as far as timing? Or?
No.
Okay.
Eddie Van Halen popped out in 1976. Actually, I didn't even start playing until Van Halen's 1984 album had
Are you serious?
Released.
You didn't start playing guitar until then?
Yeah, I didn't start playing guitar until 1980. Well, I was 17, so 68, 78, 9, 81, 2, 3, 84. 1985 is when I started playing guitar.
So what were you, like 2 when you started or something?
No, I was 17. I had been playing drums before, and
wow.
And so I moved over to guitar at the age of 17. And like I said, I was really lucky because I had been holed up in my bedroom at my house, at my parents' house for 6 months, learning what I could learn. And then those guys hired me for just a few minutes in my life. But really? I had this amazing guitar player that would teach me at every rehearsal. He would teach me something new. And we would go watch other guitar players play, and he would tell me what they were doing wrong technically, and point out their bad habits and that they acquired over years of playing with bad habits.
Gotcha.
He was just a really great educator. And honestly, there's something in the water in Charleston, South Carolina, because there's so many amazing guitar players. Probably the 10 best guitar players that I can come up with, famous or not famous, I bet you 5 or 6 of them come from Charleston, South Carolina.
Is that right?
It's
really?
Just the talent pool is so amazing there.
Really?
So as a young, struggling gunslinger back, in those days, the bar is set pretty high if you're going to gig out in the Charleston area. Especially if you're going to be a guitar player, because the bar just, Anthony Austin was the average, and he. Like I said, it would be in my top 5 picks of all-time favorite guitar players, and so there's just something in the water there that just produces great guitar players. I'm not saying that I'm one of them. I would say in the field there. No, please. Honestly, in that field in Charleston, South Carolina, I would say I'm below average. There's almost like they're all aliens there or something. It's the talent pool is just so exceptional.
Who were some of your influences back then as far as guitar playing?
Roy Clark, Big Note Guitar Book was my first introduction to anything musical. And I had little stickers all over the place on my fretboard. Also growing up in a redneck household, we watched Hee Haw on Saturday nights. So I've just always been a big fan of Roy Clark. I did not even recognize Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads or even Prince as guitar players until I had been playing guitar for quite some time. So
Roy Clark, man, that's not a bad place to, that's not a bad place to start. Roy Clark was like, I watched Hee Haw too, and I loved it. And Roy Clark was always a treat just watching him play. And Buck Owens.
I was really shifting gears slightly because of Roy Clark. Fortunately, because of my sound company business, I was able to meet Roy on multiple occasions. Whenever I told him that I was a somewhat successful musician and I contributed that to the Roy Clark Big Note Guitar Book, he got a little teary-eyed about it. He said that I was he had met dozens of musicians over the years that had learned how to play guitar with that book, but he had never met a musician that had made a living.
Wow.
And he was genuinely moved by that. And I thought that was pretty freaking cool.
Now, what was that called? You said the big Note book?
It's called the Roy Clark Big Note Guitar Book. The reason it was called Big Notes was because there was these colored stickers. And you would stick the stickers on your fretboard where, to remind you of how to make the chord or where the scale was.
Okay, so this is a book that I'm sure like a lot of like beginning guitar players picked up at the time.
It's what I had because my mother had bought it for herself when she thought she was going to teach herself how to play guitar. And like most adults, you know, life happens. She didn't have the opportunity or have the time to do so. So the book and the guitar that she had gotten in the 70s just sat in the attic until the 80s when I dusted it all off.
Really?
You know?
Really?
And yeah, so that book and the Univox guitar that she bought in 1970 something, you know, was kind of where I started with the whole thing. And you know, I had, by the time I had been playing guitar for 12 months, I had been in 2 bands that were both financially successful.
Right.
And the second of the 2 bands, we were already playing original material out. So, you know, being 18 years old and not old enough to go into a bar, certainly not old enough to play in a bar. So we'd have to have escorts, you know, not the good looking hot escorts. I mean, like, you know, parental style escorts.
Right.
They would have to bring us into the bars, and then they would, in the nightclubs, and then they would set us separate from the crowd. And so, you know, we usually have like a little makeshift room set off to the left or the right of the stage, and we couldn't leave that area at all, even to go pee. It was easier for us to pee outside the club than it was to get the escort to take us to the bathroom sometimes. So, you know, but you know, I was the oldest guy in that band, and the youngest guy was barely 14 years old, and he was a drummer, and he was a savant, an amazing musician at that age. And so we started playing the bars and clubs in Charleston, and the average, like I said, I was the oldest guy in the band at 18. I just turned 18. T.C. Carter from Carter Hall Project was the second oldest guy, and he's literally 1 year younger than me, almost to the day. So he was 17. And then Michael Hemley and Daniel Droulet, they were both barely freshmen in high school when we started playing bars and clubs. So I think that I don't know that we were necessarily a good band. I think the novelty of seeing a bunch of kids on stage in an adult environment was probably more popular at that point in time. But that's basically how it started.
So fast forward to like your songwriting, you're in the business or per se or whatever, and you're like into songwriting now. How did that come about for you?
Well, I've always, since the beginning of playing guitar, I could always put a chord structure together and write music. But I was never really got into the lyrical aspects of it. It was always somebody else's job, you know. In the words of Roby Turner, what he said to me once about 22 or 23 years ago, when I auditioned for him, he said, "You're not a singer, but you can sing." And that took a couple years to sink in, because you know, he was looking for a legit singer to replace another friend of ours that will remain nameless for this. And you know, I thought that I could go in on that audition and dazzle him with my guitar technique and my mediocre vocal, and I would get the gig. And but he needed a bigger singer than he needed a guitar player. So basically, as he escorted me out of his house, that's what he said to me was, "You're not a singer, but you can sing, and I need a singer." And I thought he was just being an asshole, but you know, 2020, I look back on it. So I've always dumped the lyric aspect off on whatever singer I was working with, whatever, you know, in that project.
You'd have them write it? Have them write
it. You know, I in some cases I would come up with the melody, and I would come up with the chorus, and maybe even the title of the song. And I would come in with, you know, like working with T.C. Carter, I would, if it was a song that I had started the process on, I would come in with drum machine, guitar, bass part, and a working title with a chorus already done. And then he would take that information, and based on the chorus, and he would write the verses around that, and vice versa. He would come to me with you know, a chord structure of a song,
Yeah.
and a verse and a chorus, but no bridge and no real arrangement. So I would take what he brought and I would create an arrangement around what he brought to the table.
So as far as the chord structure, do you have like an example of that? Am I putting you on the spot here?
So I wrote the music and the riff by myself, you know, much in an environment like this, just sitting here noodling on a guitar. Once I had done that, I was able to get with TC, and we came up with a whole story. You know, basically that song is about my parents' house in North Charleston, South Carolina, and that's where we rehearsed, was in the garage. So
and for us Star Trek fans, we're thinking Star Trek here. But anyway, moving on.
So basically, I had come up with this simple little suspended riff. I basically had come up with the whole musical arrangement, and then when TC came to Vegas to record it, we sat down in a room, and it was really fun writing that song, because he said, he's got the pen in his hand, he's tapping his chin, and he says, what was your parents' address?
Right,
and that's
right,
how, you know,
right. Inspiration comes from these places.
Playing guitars, you know, from that garage, we'd go far.
Okay. You guys did this one CD, or you did two?
We did one. We're working on a new one right now, and I'm also working on my first ever solo project.
And that's the Larry Hall project.
I don't know what it's called. Yeah, probably Larry Hall project, because that's what you and I have been gigging out for the last 20 years. But yeah, probably something. Or along just Larry Hall. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Ego Master Hall. I don't know what we'll call it. You know.
Do you have anything that you want to play from that now, or you want?
Not yet. Not yet. Okay. That's under the record label has that under tight.
Got it.
Yeah, I can't share anything with that. But got it. This is good. When is this going to air?
It'll probably be sometime in August.
Okay, so we can do another one in August, and we can actually do a listening party by that point, I believe.
Cool, awesome, that'd be great. Great idea.
We'll listen to it, and we'll critique it, and we'll talk about it. Because I should have enough of it done by that date, by mid-August.
Okay. Moving on to another project that you are or were, or depending on how you feel now. Unauthorized Ozzy, one of the premier Ozzy Osbourne tributes here in Vegas, probably around the country. You're still doing that. You're still doing that project.
Yeah, we took a decade off because we were going to kill each other if we didn't, and so we took about a decade off.
Rock star story.
Last year, we decided to test the water to see if anybody would care if we came back or not. So we did a few dates last year that went out. I would say that they went really well.
Really good band. Really good.
Oh, you know what? It's I'm the weakest link in that band.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Chaz Stumbo and Danny Buss, the rhythm section. I record every single show that we do, just so I can archive it. And sometimes I just mute all the other noise, because I feel like that Peter, the singer Peter Marino, and I are noise, because the rhythm section is so solid that I just want to mute all the noise and just listen to what those guys are moving on. It's a really fun gig. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for our guests, if ever you get the opportunity to see a band called Unauthorized Ozzy, like I said, they're one of the tribute Ozzy Osbourne bands here on this side of the country anyway. Definitely check them out. They're worth every penny. They are.
Aw. And when we're not getting along, we throw things at each other on stage and scream at each other and swing at each other.
Just like any rock band does. So it is.
We're like the tribute version of Oasis. Constantly brawling about something. But when we do get the gig out, though, it's a lot of fun. And we were expecting to do about 21 or 22 dates this year. with Live Nation. You know, we're going to do House of Blues. It was just kind of in talks, and a few other Indian casino dates, but unfortunately the corona has canceled all of that, as everything else that you and I do for a living. It's been completely canceled.
Speaking of that, moving into your other business, your sound company, again, that's Hall Audio Services, for anybody that needs a great sound company, which Larry owns. How has this whole, I hate the coronavirus name, but this whole thing affected you as a sound company, as you know, as it's affected all of them for that matter?
We haven't done a show since March 15th, and we don't have anything scheduled for the rest of the year. So
are you getting calls as far as like prospects or?
No, I wake up every morning hemorrhaging money. That's pretty much what's happening with HAS Productions right now. And but I guess if I have to look at a bright side, the bright side would be that it's forced me into deciding to be more of a songwriter, and I've had the time to spend on that. And I've written 8 or 10 songs over the last couple of months.
Nice.
And you know, they probably all suck, but they make me happy. And and so I'm going to record all of those. It's really funny. You remember Muka? On a side note?
Yes.
He just left me. I was going to call him next week on a side note to see if we could go up there and record. And he left a message on my phone this morning. Hey, Bubba, you and Eddie grab a drummer and come up here and record. That's literally the message.
Are you serious?
How crazy is that? So,
it's funny. I was just looking at a couple of the photos from that when we were up there, you know, and man, what a great time that was.
That was a great time. For those of you that are not aware, Prairie Sun Recording Studio in Northern California, it's on a farm. It looks like it's a farm. It's a very cool, tranquil vibe, and they have the most amazing equipment and staff on the planet.
Yes.
And if you're going to do a record and you want it to sound like a real record, I would recommend going there. I mean, they just, the gear they have is exceptional, and the people are really good people there too.
It really is too, and the overall vibe there is just awesome. I mean, you can just go up there and just kind of chill and all that stuff, and who knows what comes to you while you're there, because you know.
Well, that's the thing. And you notice there's no clocks in that place. You know, nobody's
not.
Yeah, there's no. When's the last time you went into a recording studio and there's no clocks on a wall? There's clocks in every studio because they're monitoring you by the hour. Prairie Sun is monitoring you by the vibe. That's, you know.
And like I said, the vibe up there is awesome. I mean, you're good up there, and I remember like seeing chickens and all that stuff just all over the place, and just it was cool. I had fun.
Cool. Yeah,
had a lot of fun. So as far as like new things, I guess we're just gonna wait until after this virus thing is done, and then we'll.
If that's okay with you, because I would like to have it to a point where maybe we even debut the single on your show, kind of a thing.
Thank you. That'd be awesome.
And so I would rather maybe put that off a little bit, just so that we can have that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you have that nice guitar. I'll play something in closing.
Okay.
Anything. I'm totally put you on spot here.
I'm going to play along with some tracks. Let me figure out where I've had to refresh my computer a couple times. So let me figure out where I am.
Nice. It sounds good too. Nice. Larry Hall, y'all. Yeah, 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 yeah. Nice, nice, nice. Thank you very much, Larry Hall. The man. The one of the players on the playground where the players come to play. Thank you, Larry. Really appreciate it.